Gothic architecture has a long history from the 12th century France to its decline in the 16th century. Even after that, there was the survival of the style here and there before it gained popularity again in the 18th century England. And that's the point. We'll focus on why the Gothic Revival made a comeback, as well as the characteristics of the movements in each country. But in case you want to know more about medieval Gothic, and if you don't really know much about it, you can check out my previous video for more details. Characteristics of Gothic Revival architecture. The Gothic Revival from the late 18th century still retained the original features of medieval Gothic, like the vertical emphasis, pointed arches, emphasis on light, stained glass windows, and ornate designs. However, the main differences between Gothic and Neo-Gothic lie in the materials used, the construction methods, and purposes. I've already explained this in my previous video, but it's definitely worth mentioning again. While original Gothic buildings were made of stone and occasionally bricks, many Gothic revivals use iron structures or woods. And with modern technology, iconic features used for supporting the height like flying buttresses and rib walls were not necessary anymore. However, you can still find these features being used as ornaments. This also applies to the less needs for gargoyles to convey rainwater to the ground due to the development of downpiping. In this period, Gothic styles became more accessible, not only for religious purposes. You can find Gothic styles in universities, government buildings, residential buildings, and even train stations. Another thing to note is that after its initial declines in the 16th century, people didn't just stop building Gothic architecture, so there was still some construction during 17th century like St. Columba's Cathedral in 1633 or Tom Towers in 1681. Gothic Revival in England. In England, two main reasons why Gothic architecture, the style of faith, regained its popularity was the Romanticism movement and the reawakening of the High Church. Let's start from Romanticism. The Industrial Revolution era started around the 1760s, and since then there have been changes in not only the technology but also society. Things became more technologically advanced, of course, but urbanism was not the most ideal thing ever happen. The Industrial Revolution caused people to migrate from the countryside to the cities in search of work. This also led to stress, pollution, disconnection with nature, along with other labor-related issues. So yes, we have been facing this kind of issue for over hundreds of years now, and I don't think it's getting any better these days. But I digress. Romanticism, initially influenced by the French Revolution, focuses on nature, individualism, and the imaginative, pretty much against the efficiency-focused mindset of the Industrial Revolution. Likewise, this movement rejected the structured, rational style of neoclassicism at that time. People sought designs that felt more raw, emotional, and connected to nature, and medieval Gothic was one of those that fit quite well. The second reason was the religion. In the 18th and early 19th century, more Protestants, occasionally referred to as religious nonconformists, began rejecting the practices of the Anglican Church. This led to the reawakening of Anglo-Catholic beliefs along with the establishment of new churches. But why they chose Gothic exactly? In general, Gothic architecture embodies Christian values quite perfectly. Its height, intricate details, and emphasis on light were seen as a symbolic of the divine. The style was believed to transcend human existence and offer a glimpse into heaven. Another surprising reason they chose the Gothic style was also because it was simply cheaper than building neoclassical churches. How? With the support of flying buttresses and pointed arches, they could build churches with thinner walls, reducing the stones in construction. Also, since large glass windows are an important part of Gothic architecture, it saves a lot of cost from buying stones, since glass has already taken a lot of space and glasses are cheaper than stone. So, Romanticism and Church of England were the main reasons for the rise of Gothic Revival in England. History of Gothic Revival in England. The mark of Gothic Revival is the Strawberry Hill House by Horace Walpole, who worked with many architects to rebuild this residence in 1747. He was also the writer of The Castle of Otranto, the first Gothic novel. After that, some architects also got inspired by the medieval style, like the Fonthill Abbey by James Wyatt from 1796 to 1813. The buildings during the early Gothic Revival used Gothic elements for the picturesque appeal with little regard for the original structural purposes. To put it simply, it wasn't really that accurate. And it wasn't until later that people began to study the style more intensely. More examples of the early studies were in 1870s when Thomas Rickmans categorized Gothic styles into Early English, Decorated English, and Perpendicular English. For those of you who are not familiar with these terms, I've already explained the differences of the three periods in my previous Gothic architecture video. You can check that out if you're interested. At the same time, the Church of England wanted to reawaken the High Church philosophies, including new establishments of Gothic churches. Therefore, the Church Building Act of 1818 allocated £1 million for church construction. After that, another £500,000 was added in 1824 to further this effort. Churches built from this act are commonly called Commissioners' churches. Examples are St. Paul's Shadwell in Stepney, Holy Trinity in Brompton, and St. Peter in Hampshire. With so much money put into building new Gothic churches, it is no surprise that there was more and more effort to study medieval Gothic architecture. An important institution promoting the study was the Cambridge Campden Society, now the Ecclesiological Society, with members including bishops, Cambridge deans, and members of Parliament. They also published a monthly journal, The Ecclesiologist, advising on church designs from 1841. Other prominent publications are Seven Lamps of Architecture and The Stones of Venice by John Ruskin. Prominent publications also include Gothic Furniture in the Style of the 15th Century and Contrast by Augustus Pugin. By the way, Augustus Pugin was a prominent figure of Gothic Revival in England. He designed the interior of the Palace of Westminster and the iconic Elizabeth Tower, or as we call Big Ben. His work, Contrast, that mentioned earlier, also promoted the faith and the architecture of the Middle Ages and supported the Church Building Act mentioned. And one thing to note about him is that he prefers sticking to the original medieval Gothic styles than adapting the new work into the Gothic Revival buildings. Aside from church buildings, a key moment for Gothic Revival was when Sir Charles Barry's design was chosen for the new Palace of Westminster after the original was destroyed by fire. Similarly, Alfred Waterhouse's Gothic Revival design won the competition for Manchester's Town Hall, increasing the popularity of the style furthermore. However, with the emergence of other styles, especially the art and craft movement, Gothic Revival has lost favour in England since the 1880s. Gothic Revival in France. During the French Revolution in the 1790s, Gothic architecture was seen as a close tie to the old regime, so there was widespread destruction of cathedral art by the revolutionaries. A figure that helped preserve Gothic churches from destruction was Alexandre Lenoir, a romantic who was strongly against the destruction of Basilica of Saint-Denis. He also established the French Monuments Museum, collecting items which Lenoir personally saved from the destruction. Then, the Romantic writer Chateaubriand was captivated by Lenoir's collection. It inspired a chapter in his book Le Génie du Christianisme when he linked Gothic to the old French Catholic spirit. Another important influence of the Gothic Revival in France is Victor Hugo's Romanticism novel Notre Dame de Paris, or The Hunchback of Notre Dame, in 1831, glorifying Gothic architecture as a symbol of national and Catholic identity. It later influenced the restoration plan of Notre Dame Cathedral in 1844 by Viollet-le-Duc and Lassus. The first person mentioned, Viollet-le-Duc, was an important architect for this movement. He did not only restore Notre Dame de Paris, but also the walled city of Carcassonne and Sainte-Chapelle in Paris, famous for using ironwork for his restorations. For Viollet-le-Duc, he appreciated how intricate while functional Gothic architecture was. He wasn't as strict about Christian values in architecture as Pugin, the notable architect of the British Gothic Revival, who preferred sticking to the original Gothic design, Some other prominent restorations are the restoration of Vézelay Abbey and Château de Pierrefonds. There were also new works, not only restoration in France. Examples for this case are Basilica of Sainte Clotilde, Notre-Dame de Bon Secours, and Basilica of Notre-Dame de Fourvière, which mixed Gothic style with Byzantine and Romanesque styles. Gothic Revival in America. One of the earliest Gothic Revival buildings in the United States was St. Mary's Seminary Chapel in 1806-08, and the iconic Gothic Revival buildings is the Trinity Church in 1846, and later the style was also applied to modern buildings and skyscrapers like the Tribune Tower built in 1923. Like England, the style wasn't very accurate in early stages, but as the style was being more studied, buildings inspired by medieval Gothic became more precise. A good example of this is St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City, built between 1858 to 1879. At first, Gothic Revival buildings were also made of stones, but afterwards there was more usage of irons and woods, especially woods, that was commonly used for the Carpenter Gothic style. Next, let's talk about Carpenter Gothic. Carpenter Gothic style gained popularity, especially in North America, through the books and publications of Alexander Jackson Davis and Andrew Jackson Downing. The style was common for residences, small churches, and Protestant churches. Some examples of Carpenter Gothic are the House of Eldon in Iowa, featured in the famous American Gothic painting, First Baptist Church in Massachusetts, and J. Mora Moss House. What's unique about Carpenter's Gothic is the usage of woods and unadorned looks. Other unique features aside from the classic pointed arches are board and batten siding, wooden turrets, gingerbread trim, which is the lace-like wood detailing, one-story veranda, often with decorative elements. And even though neutral colors like white, tan, and brown are the most common, there are a couple of examples you can see in green, and some in all colors you can imagine, whether it is red, pink, or yellow. Carpenter Gothic was popular until the 1940s, and this was quite long after the Gothic Revival in England had declined by the late 1800s. Collegiate Gothic. People have applied Gothic elements to college buildings since before the Gothic Revival. For example, King's College Chapel was built since 1446. This movement in particular is called the University Gothic, popular in England from the late 13th century to 15th century, so it's not exactly a part of Gothic Revival. Collegiate Gothic that we are going to talk about in this section refer particularly to the architecture style that was popular for college buildings in the United States. One of the earliest Gothic applications to college buildings was when Old Kenyon was built on the campus of Kenyon College in Ohio. This style became more influential when Walter Cope and John Stewardson expanded Bryn Mawr College campus with an English Gothic style. After that, there were more creations of the Collegiate Gothic, including Princeton University Chapel, Stirling Memorial Library, Harkness Tower, Duke Chapel, and Cathedral of Learning. What makes the Collegiate Gothic style distinctive from other Gothic churches are simply the result of the fact that these were built for educational buildings, so they are typically rectangular in shape, not following the cross-shaped plan often seen in churches. They have stepped gables or crenellated parapet. While pointed frame windows are still very common, it's also common to see two-door frame or rectangle ones as well. And these buildings often use bricks as materials. Gothic Revival in other countries. Apart from England, France, and America, there are also Gothic Revival buildings in other countries, for example, Brussels City Museum in Belgium, Basilica of Our Lady Luján in Argentina, Jewel Palace in Germany, Palace of Culture in Iași, and Sesha Liebrecht House in Romania. However, New Zealand saw the most widespread Gothic revival after Benjamin Mountford introduced it. The design was particularly popular in Christchurch, for example, St. Andrew's Church, the Church of Good Shepherd, and St. Luke's Church. In Australia, the Gothic revival style was also popular. William Vardell, an architect from England, established several revival buildings such as St. Patrick's Cathedral in Melbourne, St. John's College and St. Mary's Cathedrals in Sydney. After Gothic Revival, other styles like Art Nouveau and Art Deco became more prominent, but that doesn't mean that Gothic architecture is then completely forgotten when we still have some new buildings like Washington National Cathedral in 1990, St. Edmundsbury Cathedral added Gothic towers in the year 2000, Nicholas Zipper's College in 2020, and we can see many more modern Gothic house and interiors trend pop up recently as well. Gothic architecture is one of the famous inspiration for many medias like the house in Crimson Peak, Sanguinium City from Seraph of the End, and the Castle of Chaether from Vampire Hunter the Bloodlust. Another great example, and I guess my personal favorite, is the Imperial architecture in Warhammer 40,000, mixing Gothic with steampunk and dark technology designs. Apart from these, I believe there should be more examples of Gothic-inspired architecture in different games, movies, or anime. So you can comment down and share your favorites as well. I'll be very interested in seeing more cool Gothic designs. And that's all I have about Gothic Revival for now. If there's any aspect you want me to talk about more, please do tell. And as always, thank you for being here. I hope to see you on the next journey. After I've written scripts, I realized that there is so much more stuff I haven't mentioned about Gothic architecture. So if this topic hasn't bored you yet, I'll continue making more videos about it.